um very settled this time.
It's we're
We
actually ready
actually
to go this
yeah we're
episode.
actually yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of setup. There's not. I mean, there's no like talking points in a sense, unless like
No.
it's just we're just riffing. We're just riffing. But hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the rest. This is the third last one of the year. No, yeah, third. Yeah, we got two more. We'll do one post
Yeah.
grand final. Yeah. Um. Hello, welcome. It's been a week, hasn't it? It has been a week. Nathan, I'm joined by you as always. How are you, my friend?
Yeah, I don't know how to feel. And I don't think it has hit me yet. Mainly just because I had to move on. Had to head to Bendigo for the weekend, so that was thrilling, as you could imagine it was. It was a long road trip, so have things to just keep me moving. And even after that's happened, I just still sit here and I'd like the enormity of it still hasn't hit. That they are one win away from a grand final, but they're also one loss away from like watching the team that beat them in the grand final. So it's weird, something we've never experienced in our lifetime. So
Yeah,
I guess that's why we just don't understand it.
it's the closest that we've been since 2000, and in 2000, obviously we versed Essendon, and Essendon obviously went on to win the flag that year. So at Essendon were by far the favourites in that game. I don't know exactly what the feeling was like around the club in 2000, but this time it's very much I don't know. There's his backs against the wall feeling,
Yeah.
underdog kind of. Who knows why not us type thing. But yeah, it's been apart from that. Obviously, you said Bendigo, obviously doing the 18 stuff as you always do. Likewise, I've been just chilling, just kind of just soaking it all in, just trying not to get ahead of ourselves. We'll speak about the game because we'll speak about the game very soon because of course it was our first game. It was the first game on the weekend. But yeah, question before we start, a little bit of question without notice. This is our first time in a final series since in 10 years.
Yeah.
Have you been able to like watch the finals, like and really like sink your teeth into it and like really enjoy it, or is it just does it still feel like the regular season? Because to me, it's like I still don't feel like finals have started because I haven't sat down and watched every single final like I normally have. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sort of 50-50 on that, right? Because I think the Sydney game definitely felt like one. And that's only because I haven't played them at the MCG in, however many years. We don't usually, like that. We didn't play them at home, whereas the Melbourne game didn't because, like, you knew what the score was going to be before it even happened, which is really
Yeah,
weird for, like, that type of finals game. You knew exactly what you were walking into, which made it feel really regular season.
yeah,
But I it's just a weirder final series. I feel like maybe if you took Carlton out, put the Bulldogs in it, you'd probably still say the sort of same thing. It doesn't feel like much of a finals because there's a few teams that just have gone far that you don't expect, and you're expecting the top four at this point of the year, and you have two of the bottom four of the eight. So bit weird to think about. And if you thought about that a couple of months ago, you know put a multi on that one. Geez, I don't know, you'd be
yeah,
up by now.
yeah. You would. It's very yeah. I don't know. I still haven't come to grips with everything that's happened. So like I feel like a lot of this is just gonna be me just kind of confusing on what to actually say. But yeah, obviously chills in the chat. Maz, Jimmy, thank you all for tuning in. Let's just start. Let's just start, shall we? And let's kick things off. Friday night, 96,500 people. Um, your 96,000 people, the largest crowd this year,
Yeah.
finals and home and away. The largest crowd Carlton has played in front of since a long time. I think it might have been since the 95 granny, or maybe even before then.
Then I think the 99. Yeah, I think it was the
The,
99 granny.
the 99 granny. There you go. So it's been a long fucking time. Um, what was your day like? Let's start from the start. What was your Friday? What was your Friday like? Um, Heading into the ground, pre-game, all the emotions, all the feelings.
Oh, my day was spent working just at my casual job, which was very. It's very isolating. I mean, purely because there's not a lot of workers at what I do at this time of year. So it was just sort of. I listened to the Carlton podcast with Andy Moore and that, and I don't listen to a lot of like if you know me well, I don't like listening just because I don't want to think about it too much and don't want to think about it. That is generally it, and that made me go in with a thing of like, geez, I don't really mind if we lose tonight, which is such a bad thing to think. But I listened to that, I was like, wow, people are happy just from the one win. And I think a lot of people could have lived with that. But then it was also like, well, we actually can win. Like there is a genuine, like we are more than 50% likely to win this game. It's whether they just can execute it. Headed to the station, got in, had a best mate who was Melbourne, who I always go with, and he was pretty devastated after the match, as you can imagine. And then I had a cousin who was Carlton, so we were sharing that emotion together in the end. And yeah, I always get there early, suck it in. It was right up the top of level 4, row DD. And I thought it were good seats in terms of atmosphere. It was just nuts. Deafening. Sort of, conceded, around the 20th minute mark, that fourth quarter. I was like, you know what? We probably weren't the better team of the night, but they've given it a fair crack. Motlop kicks a goal, very quiet. Like I was like, fist pumps just sort of so it's like 2 on left, probably game over. And then Akers kicks it, and I just I lost it. Like I was like, you know what, we might not get this moment. Like if we lose it from here, I'm going to enjoy this moment right now.
Yeah,
and take it. It was just nuts. It was just unexpected. And I don't like. Can you remember a game where we've come back like that, as late as that? Like it's happened to us, but we never do it to people. When we've won close games, we've held on. We've been up, but we've held on. So it was like a new experience almost. I don't remember the last time we came back and won a game like that in the last minute. Like it's just always happened to us. So it was nuts.
It's a good question. Probably the Gold Coast game is probably the closest thing. But that was more like halfway through the last, and we actually were in a position where we were 2 goals up and we had to hold on for the last couple of minutes instead of having to kick a goal in the last couple of minutes. So, it's actually, you raise a good point. I actually can't remember the last time we were in that situation. Did you sense a lot of nervous energy pre-game just around the stadium, like from both supporter bases? It was very not going to say anything, not going to like try jinx anything, just sit here and enjoy the experience. I feel like it was just a really calm, not calm, but it didn't feel like a final because it felt like everyone was so scared about the potential outcome. Because obviously Melbourne, we'll speak about Melbourne, right? Melbourne, obviously, we all know the pressure that they were under based on where they've been, what they have done, what they haven't done, and where they could be, and all the permutations surrounding that. Obviously, the pressure with us, etc., etc. Obviously, the story's been told ad nauseum, right? And will continue to be told in the lead up to the game on Saturday afternoon. But yeah, it was. When Melbourne kicked the first 3 of the game, you're sitting there thinking 3? Was it 3 of the game?
Yeah,
Melbourne kicked the first 3 of the game. You're sitting there thinking, oh dear, like this is going to get bad, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, surely we haven't done all this work to rock up and not really perform. And then Tom De Koning announces himself with 2 goals in a minute, and all of a sudden we're back in the game. Did you what'd you make of that minute? If that minute when Tom De Koning just goes mental and kicks 2 and all of a sudden kind of back in the game, it was a moment that had to be grabbed by someone. And for a person that's been under a lot of pressure for the whole year and for the last couple of years with the contract, and obviously he's going to be a number 1 ruck, will he leave, etc. For him to grab that moment in the way that he did and really drag us back in the game was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was extremely impressive. I wasn't too down when Melbourne kicked the first 3 because we weren't playing bad football. It was just turnover, and it was something you could tell could be fixed. And yeah, just big moments. And I'm very anti-ruckman kicking goals. Like I just assume when it's in a ruckman's hand that he's going out on the full. So it's always very shock factor and the occasion as well. Considering we were 3 goals down that early, there was a lot of pressure on both those kicks, and obviously the second one would have been quite easy, knowing you just did it. But yeah, just big moments that it was so early, but they were arguably bigger moments than Motlop kicking a goal in the last quarter, or Holland's making that kick. Like that's just a bigger moment.
Yeah, if he doesn't kick those 2 goals, we probably don't get back into the game, and then
Yeah.
Melbourne probably can go up the other end and kick a goal themselves, and then really put the game to bed. It settled into what looked to be a blowout early on when Melbourne were 19 points up. It settled into the predictable and kind of expected arm wrestle for 2.5 call for basically the rest of the game. And I think the biggest margin from that point when Tom DeConnie kicks the first goal was 10 points, a Carlton lead halfway through the second quarter. So that in itself shows just how tight that game was. And like you said, everyone knew that it was going to be this because Carlton and Melbourne are arguably 2 of the most evenly matched teams in the competition, especially with the lineups that were put out on Friday. You have Melbourne's backline and Carlton's backline, 2 of the best backlines in the comp. You have 2 midfields which are extremely elite, and you've got 2 forward lines which are undermanned and can be profligate at times. And then Carlton obviously have the ace card with Charlie Kerner, which I feel like there's a talking point around him considering his performances in the last 2 games. But yeah, you just knew that it was going to just settle into an arm wrestle and it was not going to be tight, even when Carlton kicked 6 of 7 goals, whatever it was. Based on like 6 of the last 7 goals, or 6 of the 7 goals from that halfway through the first quarter, halfway through the seconds. I didn't feel like the game was ever going to blow out, even when Carlton kicked those 5 goals in a row, whatever it was. When Charlie kicks that goal from the goal square, you're thinking, could this blow out? I always thought that Melbourne were going to hit back straight away. And it just was, I don't know how it happened to be Joel Smith to drag Melbourne back into the game. But you had Tom DeConnie on one end doing making a name for himself, and then you have Joel Smith, who was a reject defender, moved forward in a role that he's played that role not often, but has played the role definitely previously, and made the game his own, obviously kicking that big goal in the second quarter to get him back into the game. Let's go to halftime. All the emotions, all the feelings at halftime. I was still real touch and go. I still wasn't convinced.
I did think they were pretty gassed out, and it felt like
we spoke about this last week. Yeah,
they were winning the game off 10-minute patches, and that's sort of what I kept feeling. It's like, well, look, we're able to sort of absorb a lot of it, and we're kicking it enough to get ourselves in a winnable position at times. And I never felt awfully confident that we'd roll them at any point. It just never felt like we were going to say, all right, we're on here and we're just going to take it home. It was a matter if Melbourne would sort of let off in the end, which seems like they did. They just choked it. They didn't really let off. They just choked. It was as simple as that. And then it was the Gawn kick. I was like, we're winning it. The Gawn miss, sorry. And I was like, yeah, we're winning this game. It was just identical to Melbourne-Brisbane last year. Melbourne, they know when they miss their moment. It's very evident on the field when they know they've squandered a really big moment, and you could tell. And I was like, there's something's going to happen here because Melbourne just won't put us away, and they pulled it out of somewhere, and wherever it was out of, it worked and it did the job. So.
It did. Yeah. We spoke pre-show about that kind of, obviously, arm wrestle. Can't kick the first 2 of the last. I mean, I think we can speak about Sam Walsh in a moment. Can't kick the first 2 of the last, and then Melbourne hit back with 2 relatively quickly after that, and then for about 10 minutes, it felt like if Melbourne just kicked the goal, they'd win the game. They had the Gawn miss. The Gawn miss, the Fritsch miss, the Oliver touch on the line by Gawn, and then the Cozzy Pickett miss. 4, I wouldn't say gilt edge chances, but 4 line ball. I think 2 of them hit the post. Fritsch's one went really, really close, and then 3 of them hit the post. Yeah, 3 of them hit the post. Gawn snap. Oliver's kick was tapped onto the post, and then Pickett snap hit the post.
Yeah.
And then Fritsch's one was millimeters away, and then just pandemonium. We all know we don't really need to go through it. Motlop's goal and then Akers' goal. Do you think you spoke about this? Do you think Carl won the game or Melbourne lost it?
Oh, 100% Melbourne lost it
Yeah,
because it was in their hands. And then not Carlton also did enough to win it for themselves though. And that's what I mean.
of
Like
course.
those patches where they played good football, they did prove they were in the contest. It wasn't like they were getting dominated across 4 quarters, but just sort of were behind by 3 goals. Like they were ahead. They were playing good football. They just gassed out and Melbourne lost it, really. Carlton still proved they deserve. I mean, deserve is a whole other thing. If you win, you win. I guess
Yeah.
deserve is when you talk about Adelaide, Sydney type games and all that.
Yes.
But I think if you win a game fair and square, you win a game. So they did it.
Yeah. Obviously, Jimmy hinting at some dirty tactics. I'm sure that's a talking point in itself, which we may as well cover now. Obviously, Pickett, we all know his bump on Cripps, which how that was given 1 week is beyond me. He's obviously punched McGovern in the back of the head, which was interesting. And then Sparrow, I think it was, driving Walsh's head into the advertising hoardings, whether or not that was intentional or not, he still did it. And then again, Pickett giving away 2 50-metre penalties, Oliver giving away a 50-metre penalty. A lot of ill discipline from Melbourne, which probably lends back to that point where you made, where Melbourne really had it in their hands and just like complete brain fades and complete just losing concentration, probably wanting the game too much and wanting to win it too much pushed them to that kind of line where they didn't really where they eventually just stepped over it in terms of their physicality, in terms of their want to win, probably testing the umpire's patience a little bit too much. It probably leads back to the whole Melbourne losing it instead of Carlton winning it. But then again, Carlton kept their heads. They weren't phased by it all. They even that last play, if you thought if Jacob Wedding had marked that ball and just gone bang off a step, just barreled it back where it came from, you probably don't blame him because it's like 90 seconds to go, just get the ball forward at every possible opportunity. But the poise to kick it to the middle of the ground, and then obviously Holland's the Doc, and then Doc had about 400 options to pick from. Complete, once again, probably goes back to that Melbourne losing it. Complete structural breakdown behind the ball for Melbourne. Kemp, McGovern, Kerno, and Akers were all free. 2-on-1 in the goal square. Obviously, Akers marks and goals, and then obviously even post that goal, I should say. You had the Rivers smothered kick by Chera, Lever standing under the ball, not being able to pick it up, and then Carlton just win the ball and surge it forward, and that's the game. A lot of horror moments. I think it's mentioned here in the comments. The Gorn had a couple of horror moments in that last quarter. It seemed like, I'm sure we'll touch on Carlton when we get into the preview of the game on the weekend. So I think we can probably touch on Melbourne now. Is this going to become a big issue for them? They've played, since they won the flag in 21, they've played 4 finals, all the MCG, and they've all lost. And they lost them in very weird circumstances. The Brisbane game, they probably should have won. The Collingwood game, they should have won, and they arguably should have won the game on the weekend. Their last 3 finals, they should have won, and they've cost themselves a place in 3 prelims. Yeah, because 2 qualifying or 2 semi-final losses and a qualifying final loss.
Oh, 100%. I think it's the manner in which they have lost. It's been identical every single time, which is just crazy to think about that a team can lose the same way that many times, which sort of asks the question, is it just embedded in the culture? Which not really. They've proven they can win a premiership. Maybe it's just the group mentally, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense either, considering they won a premiership, obviously at the Adelaide Oval and then Optus. So I guess if you look at it, they never really played a final series in natural conditions. So that probably did make quite a big impact in the end. And maybe they just can't hack it real big time when, you have, and they're usually outnumbered crowd-wise. And I do think that makes a difference as well. And I think that made a huge difference on Friday night. When they played Brisbane, there were quite a lot of Brisbane and it nearly evened out. Sydney, same deal, and then Collingwood obviously was heaps more. So I think it's a mental thing in terms of just the occasion in Melbourne when everything is leaning towards your favour most of the time. Obviously, Collingwood was technically they were the home team, so weren't as expected to win. But compared to the other games where all the pressure's on you, maybe they just can't hack it come the end of the year, because that list should be in grand finals at the very least. I think it seems like quite a not a waste of their years, because I don't think they're finished yet, but it is a waste because you look back at these years and think, well, there was so much potential and it just wasn't used. So
Yeah, well,
they're in a weird spot.
they are. As things stand, this group has only played in 2 preliminary finals in 5 years.
Yeah.
Oh, in what, from 18 to now? Yeah, 5 years. It should be at least 3, at least minimum, right? It's yeah, it's tricky because their list is so talented, like so talented, unbelievably so. 2 generational midfielders, a generational ruckman, the best ruckman the game has seen in a long, long time. I think he's surpassed the likes of Dean Cox, right? If he's not surpassed him, he's right up there with him. Gorn is so good, right? Probably had one of his worst games, especially worst second halves I've seen him play on the weekend. Um, They've got 2 generational defenders in May and Lever. They've got some pieces around the ground which are just so like people speak a lot about their forward line, but when they won that flag, it was with Tom McDonald, who was drafted as a defender and got turned into a makeshift forward. Bailey Fritsch, who I don't even know what pick he got taken in the draft, but it wasn't high, and Ben Brown, who they got for nothing. Right, so it's not like they've been reliant on their stars. They've lent on their stars a lot, but I haven't. I don't think when you look at that team, the one in 2021, it was Petrarca won it for them, or Oliver won it for them, or Gorn won it for them. Right? I think they definitely helped in that prelim. Gorn kicked 6 goals or 5 goals, whatever it was, certainly helped. But I don't think it was solely based on them. I think they're just in a really weird spot. And how much do you attribute this to injuries? Because they had a very their forward line was makeshift as it is, but with no Van Rooyen, who was obviously suspended, no Petty, who looked to be that forward that they were looking out for in the latter half of the year before he went down with an injury. Jake Melksham, who we all know how well he plays against Carlton, right? So I think he would have been useful on the weekend. Ben Brown out of form. Tom McDonald, did Tom McDonald even play? Like, with all due respect, he was absent. How much do you attribute this to potential injuries? Obviously, Oliver's missed a big chunk of the year. Gorn missed a big chunk of the year with a knee injury. Is that an excuse, or is that just something that every club has dealt with? And if they think they're at a level where they should be winning premierships, that depth should probably be something that needs to be questioned, or should be good enough to kind of fill the holes that are made through injury and suspension.
Yeah, well, I agree with the latter on that, on those statements. So every team has injuries, and if you are, I mean, Carlton had injuries of their own. Well, yeah, concussion protocols. I mean, suspensions aren't injuries, but players, yeah, is the point. And I think this year is even less an excuse, because they actually did the right thing in terms of, peak at the right time. Well, they started a bit slowly, whereas, the last 2 years they've gone full on 10-0, and then they just drop off as it goes along. But they ended with a win in Sydney against a team who was playing for a home final. Like, that's as good a win you can get, in football, in terms of the stakes that were on the line. And Collingwood game, I don't feel like there were a heap of negatives to say. You can't go out and win convincingly. It was just, I think it just sort of kept, the weight was on their shoulders a little bit. But injuries did hurt them a little bit. They were pretty key personnel, but like you said, if you're aiming for premierships, then you should have that depth, and you should have trust that the lower players on that list can come up and do their job. And it definitely didn't feel like they did. And to have someone like Josh Shackey as your sub was, a bit of alarm bells. Like, you kind of did raise your eyebrows at that one a little bit. So may have been their own fault a little bit, but look, every team's got their injuries, and you saw Collingwood last week. They did it pretty, I won't say comfortably, but they did it without Nick Dacos. So it's got to adapt, and they just didn't seem to adapt, or just too many passengers in that team that weren't able to stand up.
Yeah, I agree for sure. Look, it would be very helpful if they had an all-Australian ruckman that they could put as the sub, but you can't win them all. Can't win them all, unfortunately. No, don't have one. No, I don't, they don't. I'm pretty sure they don't anyway. Because if they did, they would use him, right? Surely.
You'd certainly think, eh?
You'd think so. I think it's time we move on because we can speak about Melbourne ad nauseum, and I think a lot of people can. But would you say it's a failure of a year, just wrapping things up on that point for them? Or would you say it's like a pass mark or...
Oh, no, 100% a failure. I mean, to think as well, if Caleb Marchbank hadn't touched that ball, they would have finished second. So I'm just, if you put into perspective, they were one win off second. It was a failure. They should have beaten us, given we just put everything on the line the week before, just to give it and I think as much as Carlton say, no, we want to impact goes far. The first goal, if you're looking week by week, is to win one final. They did that. They really should have put us away, I feel like. So it's just the way they did it as well. Straight sets back to back. You cannot say there were many positives in that. Maybe if you lost in a different way, but they didn't. It was the exact same way.
Yeah. A lot to ponder. Chills here. Probably wrapping up on the Melbourne point. Can Melbourne rejuvenate Ben Brown as a makeshift forward ruck? Yeah. Grundy, I don't think so. I don't think Ben Brown has the kind of... It's going to sound really harsh. I don't think Ben Brown has the skills to do anything other than be a pure leader mark forward.
I'd agree with you on that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's time to move on because we've got 3 other games to speak about. So, the game on Saturday night, Giants Port.
Let's get into it.
Do you want to start us off with?
Yeah, I'll start.
With your
Port. That is. I just thought Port would go and do the job. Come on. I mean, I know the Giants they've just been rocking it lately, but with that home crowd, there really is no excuse. They should have, especially when GWS went on that run, it was just silent. It's give them something. Give them something because they're clearly in a form. And they did the job. They were so good. One of the weirder finals experience I had watching it from a mate's house flat in Bendigo. So on my phone, that was just one of the weirder finals watching experiences I've ever had in my life. But no, they just rolled him. It was very it just happened and it was game over. Port never looked apart from that first 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, they never looked like they were threatening, which is just I can't really fathom it, considering with that home ground advantage, how you can just let off that easily and let GWS off the chain like that. But it was just poor tactically. The crowd was poor and wasn't helping, but the amount of loose overlaps the Giants had, especially in that second quarter, I just don't know how you let that happen repetitively as well. And it goes back to the whole, they're just mentally not going. They're not there. That team cannot do it under Hinkley because they know they're not capable of beating the best teams when it comes to finals times. And they got too arrogant when they played us, thinking let's rest a couple, come back for our granny. And quietly, I think that was, they got what they deserved. They went in very arrogant too early, and it didn't pay off in the end. So a lot to learn from that. But it was just, props to the Giants. They're nuts. They're just nuts to deal with.
I think they're the main story out of the game. The attention will be on Port, naturally, right? And arguably fairly so. But I think the story of the game is definitely the Giants. How they've been able to turn around this list, which looked to be aging looked to be aging, looked to be well past its peak, to this really stupidly well-rounded, just clinical team, really clinical. Um, Obviously, Stephen Canelo is playing the best football of his life. He's so good. Like Carl Ward, he's 34 years old, playing like a 23-year-old, right? Just slipping tackles, kicking the ball inside 50 like nobody's business. Josh Kelly's found that 2017, 2018 form that got him his $7 billion contract or whatever it was. Tom Green is stepping up in the absence of Hopper and Taranto, and he's going to become a jet if he isn't already. Jesse Hogan's playing like an $800,000 a year player. Jack Riccardi's playing like a $700,000 a year player. Their defense is solid. They were really good. Like they were really, a lot can be spoken about how poor Port were, but the Giants made them look bad at times because the way that they moved the ball through the middle of the ground, just with that quick, precise ball movement, getting out the back to Green and to Hogan and to Daniels and Bedford, just exceptional.
It's becoming a case now of, instead of saying, oh, GWS need to, like, how will they beat Port or how will they beat St Kilda? It's now a case of how will X beat GWS.
Yeah.
They take the game to every opposition, which is just, I guess it's something you don't expect from them purely just because you think the crowd would play a factor and get on their nerves a little bit, but it is they always make the opposition play catch up straight away, and it takes a 5-minute period, and that's what clinical teams do in a way, and it's sort of a bit of a, like, it kind of reminds me of Carlton of 2022. They'd have those 6 or 7 goal quarters and then game over, really.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of just having that buffer, and it's to a point like, okay, well, the opposition might come back, but that's a lot to deal with now.
Yeah.
You know, mentally, how do you come back from that and not have that stress of, I don't want that to happen again? And yeah, like, they're just that clinical, and that, like, especially their forward line, I just love watching. It works so well. Like, even the likes of Bedford, Brent Daniels, like, I just think they do the little things so well, and that's what makes it work when you've got the likes of Hogan up there and Riccardi, who they capitalise when they take those contested marks, and then Toby Green just to finish it off. You don't actually need him to play well, but when he does, it's just you're in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. Like, they're really good, like really good. And what frustrated me when Carlin played them in round 24 is people like, who are the Giants beaten, etc., right? But like they're not that good, whatever. But they are, like, if they started unassumingly. They've started unassumingly. They lost a couple of bad ones early on. Lost the West Coast in round 2. Let's not forget. But then they just kicked on. It was like around 10, 11. They just started winning and playing well. And they don't have. It seems like they're probably one weakness that I saw probably on the weekend, and it's been highlighted a lot throughout the week when speaking about the potential weaknesses and where Collingwood can get at GWS is they probably don't defend the corridor as well as what a lot of other teams do, and Collingwood are one of the best teams at exploiting the corridor and exploiting space. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But as Tom Green said post the game against St Kilda, anytime, any place, 11 venues, free smoke wherever you want it. If there's any team that won't fear 96,000 Collingwood nutcases screaming at the top of their lungs on a Friday night in a prelim final, it's this team. And whether that causes a perfect storm and the upset happens and GWS somehow win, or whether it creates an opposite effect where Collingwood know that and change the way that they play and whatever, and whether or not it's kind of reverse psychology, who knows? But yeah, it's gonna create a very interesting game, which I'm sure we'll touch on when we preview it. Let's finish up on Port, and then we can go into the games this weekend. I mean, they've backed themselves into a corner. They're giving Hinkley a 2-year deal. I don't think there's any way of getting out of it now. I assume that's locked in and he'll be coaching them for 2 years. I don't think they're going to sack him. This list probably is good enough to make a prelim. They probably should have made a prelim based on what they did. Obviously, that 13-game win streak, and even in that 13-game win streak, they had some wins where it was like, yeah, good on you. You smashed up Hawthorn at home, great, like whatever. But then they also that game against Melbourne in the wet at at the Oval. That game was like, wow, like they're good. Butters had a breakout game, and everyone was like, geez, Porter going to be a handful to deal with when it comes to September football, and then they just fell away. Yeah, what are your thoughts? Like, obviously, we know your thoughts, but articulate them.
Yeah, my thoughts. Well, look, I was proved wrong at the start of the season. I didn't think they would make finals, and I just thought they were mentally ruined, which, in hindsight, technically it's right. They are still mentally just not there, but to do what they did was extremely impressive. To do 13 in a row. How many teams can do that, really? It's hard to do. And you could say they peaked at the wrong time, but they've been good in regular seasons for the last 4 years, minus 22. But even so, they were good after the first 5 rounds. So
Yeah.
They know how to do it when there's no pressure. That's not their issue. It's when pressure's on them and it actually matters. They cannot do it. And yeah, sure, 2 qualifying final wins, but that's nothing in the end of that. At the end of the day, you don't look back at it and say, well, we won 2 qualifying finals. They didn't win what they needed to. They just won't go anywhere. And they could get better next year and they still won't win it. Because there's no point of difference with Port Adelaide. You never look at them and think, this is unbeatable. Same with sort of what we thought with Collingwood early in the year. You look at them and think, like, how do you beat them? You look at them and think there's a point of difference there. Whereas, same could be said with Melbourne the year before. And whereas Port Adelaide, you never think that. You just said, okay, well, they've got some guns in that midfield and they've got some assets, up forward. But what makes Port Adelaide to the point where you don't want to play them in the finals, and it's who's going to match Port Adelaide in the grand final type of question. That's just sort of how I think with Port, because they can remain good, but I just don't think they're mentally ever going to overcome that hurdle when Hinkley's still there, especially.
Yeah, it's going to take a drastic change in either personnel or personnel at whether it's at playing level, staff level, or board level. Obviously, they're bringing in Zerk Thatcher, Radigalia, and Jordan Sweet have requested trades to Port Adelaide. So, that's wow, sure, scary. Doesn't really make me think, wow, Port are going to be really good next year. It makes me think, Port are going to be 5% better because Jordan Sweet is a good VFL ruckman that's serviceable at AFL level. Radigalia is okay, and Zerk Thatcher is once again okay. Unless all of a sudden Ken just brings out the best game plan to ever exist. If you just put those 3 players in this current Port Adelaide team, I don't think they get anything. I don't think they get marginally. So I don't think they get considerably better. I only think they get better by a very small percentage, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't really affect any meaningful result. You spoke about how Melbourne peaked at the right time, and it just fell away. I think you would probably say that Port peaked at the wrong time, and when it came to they spent all their tickets too early, and then when it comes to the crunch, they were just out of steam. They were figured out, and they just couldn't find that 5th or 6th gear. It seemed like they were stuck in 4th gear, which they were stuck in ever since like round 15.
I don't think they peaked at the wrong time. They just got arrogant. I genuinely believe when they decided to drop Horn, Francis, and Dixon against us, because they weren't injured, no way they were injured. I don't believe that for a second. When they decided to rest them and just prepare for the Collingwood game, that is when they lost. And then they got beaten by us convincingly. And it's like, oh, well, they're injured. It was when the excuses came out, that is when they lost the plot, I think, because they just expected that it was all going to happen still, that you can afford to do these things. When did you see Collingwood do that during the year and drop a few players? They don't do that. I mean, we know they weren't injured because seemed to be playing fine up until that point, and maybe I'm wrong, but it felt very excuse based this when they played us, and it was, oh, we'll give up a game here just to prepare for Collingwood. Well, beating Collingwood in round 17 doesn't win you a premiership. It means nothing. It just means you might finish second or you might finish first. I guess you could say it didn't matter in the end, but it should not have had that much weight on them, and I think that was what lost them. I don't think they peaked at the wrong time because, like, realistically, they still had time to play good football before the finals came up. But there was still like 6 or 7 rounds left, so they could they were able to lose those games. They just, I think they were too arrogant. It was just, they thought it was just going to happen for them, and it didn't.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I can't disagree with that at all. To finish things up, I want to, let's go back to round 2. And the talk was round 2, 3, sack Hinkley. Hinkley should get sacked. You were adamant that they should sack him. If they did sack him at that time, whenever it was, round 2 or 3 or whenever, around earlier in the season, if they did sack him at that time and brought in, let's just say, Josh Carr as the interim, would they have been any better off now? I'm not saying would they have gone into a prelim. I'm not saying would they have played in the semi. They could have missed finals. But would the outlook of Port Adelaide be any better or any worse if they had sacked Ken in round 3 and brought in an interim or whatever?
Well, I got to stick with my word, and I remember saying at that time, yes, they would be better off. And where they had finished might have been a bit different, just because if you do make that change, well, it wasn't really mid-season, it would have been early season, but I guess to adapt to that would have taken a bit of time. But I think you're at least 3 or 4 months ahead by the time you do start to get things clicking under a new coach and a few other new personnel. So I do think it would have been better off. Whether they would have finished where they finished this year, maybe not. But I do think in the long run, I mean, I guess we'll find out when we find out. But I do think it will benefit them significantly. I think it's that simple, and maybe it's not. But I just think it's that easy to have a reset, a change. I guess we saw it with Carlton. It obviously didn't happen last year, but you can just see when something changes. It's just it can just come together, and it takes time, as clearly we saw, and it can go very badly. But then, in the long run, hindsight's a beautiful thing, I guess.
Of course.
I do think it would have helped.
There you go. Fair enough. I'm assuming we both give it a failure of a year. Except that, they should have done better.
I mean, got back to where they need to be.
Yeah.
But they're no better than they were 2-3 years ago before that when they were making finals. So
yeah, they had to play catch up, and
failure.
Yeah, they're a year behind.
Yeah.
They're a year behind, which is not good considering how quickly football moves. Let's move on, and let's start Friday night. Let's preview the games before we go to Saturday afternoon. And oh god, Friday night, Collingwood Giants. Collingwood coming off a week off, obviously winning the prelim or winning the qualifying final in unconvincing circumstances, like we spoke about with Melbourne. Probably it was more Melbourne losing that game than Collingwood winning that game. However, they're going to take confidence in the fact that they're in the prelim. They had the week off. They get Dacos back. They allow Moore to rest up a bit, allow Murphy to rest up a bit, and probably barring Taylor Adams, which is very unfortunate for him considering he plays. I think he's played every single home and away game for the last 2 years, but has been injured for the final series or something very unfortunate in that regard. So obviously that's very stiff for Adams because I think he's a pretty handy player. But thoughts, feelings, emotions. Friday night. Can we get a crowd estimate? They're saying close to 100. I don't think it's going to get to. I don't think it's going to get to 6 figures. I think it's going to get close. I reckon 97. I think it'll better. It'll top us, I think.
Really? I'm interested to see it. I think it'd be similar to ours. When you're playing GWS, it's just like you have to source an extra 30,000 supporters in essence.
Yeah.
Which I feel they can. I'm sure they can. It's just whether 30,000 extras turn up is a different story. And I guess we'll see, but it'll be a massive crowd. Initial thoughts, feelings, emotions. Well, now GWS have proven me wrong. I still, I still say Collingwood just like have to win this with the crowd, but the crowd doesn't mean anything. Like that's what I struggle to get through my head with this GWS team.
Yeah,
they're not Gold Coast. Like they can do it, which just I don't understand how you can do it. Collingwood, like Carlton did last week, they do enough to win the game in patches. GWS can sustain their patches of good form in a game and also pile it on. I just think it's whichever one of those strategies works, which you'd probably say GWS. If you're going to put 6 or 7 goals on, then continue to hold it. Collingwood struggled to hold on. Well, they did. They struggled to hold on to their lead. Melbourne were relentless after half time and they were holding up just. Melbourne couldn't convert. I think it feels like it's going to be really similar to 2019. Like you watch it and you think, well, that's what Giants did. They put 5 or 6 goals on them, and then
they just held.
Well, they couldn't score
on.
after that, actually. But
yeah,
I think if Collingwood would start well. I just don't think because we actually haven't had to see the Giants come back yet. I think that's something as well. When have they actually come back? They're always ahead.
Yeah.
So I just would like to. I'd be interested, against the flow. You're down 3 or 4 goals come the half. Are they able to pile 5 goals on in a row when it means that much? I'm just really interested because I think they can do it. They pile goals on when the game's still in the balance. Like that's when they're able to do it, and they just blow away. I'm just really intrigued to see how they approach it if they just go full out because they do have nothing to lose. They can go full out attack. This is FIFA. They're going all out attack mode on this game and saying, like, let's just put a winning score on because
let's go punch for punch.
Yeah, Collingwood have to defend a winning score. That's sort of the way I see it because they've struggled to kick winning scores. Like 60 realistically was not going to win, won't win you a game in good conditions. And I know it wasn't good in the qualifying, but they concede quite a lot. People kind of forgotten they were conceding over 100 points 3 games in a row. Like they were really struggling, and GWS is a team who could easily put on 100. So I think it's a matter of Giants kicking a winning score and Collingwood, in their case, defending a winning score.
Yeah. So in the last couple of games Collingwood have played, 60 to 53, 60 on 99 times out of 100 doesn't win you a game of football. Melbourne just saw the goals and decided to kick anywhere but the goals. So there's that. They 101 to 31, but that's Essendon. Like Essendon. 100 to 124. Once again, conceding a lot. Granted, they scored a lot under the roof at Marvel, but you can't be coughing up 124 points. 109 to 101. Very similar story. 105 to 30 to 73. 73 probably wins you half of your games of football, but not when you're conceding 105 points. And then they versed us 79, scoring 79 and conceding 93. So they do have a tendency to concede big scores. Most of those games were probably without Darcy Moore, I think. Maybe that was the Geelong game, so maybe towards the back end of that. But regardless, I think the game will be... I don't know. It's interesting. I think the Giants will give it a crack. I think I don't think the Giants will turn up and get rolled over. They played earlier on in the year, and the Giants got rolled. See, it was 10 goals. It was 10 goals. It was relatively close for most of the game. It was just about 4 goals halfway through the third quarter. Then the Pies ran away with it. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. I think the Giants will have the ability to stay in touch for the majority of the game. It'll be interesting to see whether or not it's one game too many, and the Giants it just gets too much for them. In the same vein, we all know the famous law of the Collie Wobbles. does this come back to bite them in this game when it's very similar to 2019? Crowds on their side. They're the not I want to say the form team, but they're the team that has a lot more going for them. With the week off, getting Dacos back, obviously JWS having to travel twice. This will be their third time they've travelled in the last 3 weeks. Granted, that in the last 4 weeks they played at Marvel, then the Bye, then the G, then Adelaide, so they haven't played at home in 3 games. Yeah, the Orange Tsunami could come up and just do something magical. It would be insane if they did. Uh, do you have a player maybe that you got your eye on about if he could, like, if he plays well, they play well type of thing? I mean, obviously Nick Dacos returning from injury is probably um the highlight in a sense.
Yeah.
But anyone else?
I think it's going to be either Riccardi or Hogan, because one of them will rinse Murphy or Darcy Moore, because I still think they are, especially Darcy Moore, if you could, easy to get a hold of, very easy to dominate. I think if one of those tall forwards can have a day out, you could almost win the game off that. And it's similar to what Kerno did. Like, you can win a game off a performance like that. So that's my players.
Yeah, fair. I think I'll balance it out and go for a Collingwood player. I think that's only fair. You're looking towards someone like Bobby Hill, who had a very good qualifying final against his former team, or had a very good qualifying final, against his former team. He could probably just explode and really endear himself to the Collingwood faithful. It's been a very shrewd pickup, and he would have done very well in this Giant system. By the way, imagine Bobby Hill alongside Daniels and Green and Bedford. That's a bit scary. So thankfully for the rest of the competition, they let him go. But yeah, I think Bobby Hill. But then again, Dan McStay's had a very underwhelming year. If he can just bob up, it's going to be very hard against Taylor and Buckley and that very stringent JWS defense. But if they can get the ball into him quick, if he can really get his feet underneath him quite early on in the game, I think Dan McStay could potentially finally have his breakout game, and really kick a couple, influence around the ground, and really win them and be the catalyst for them winning the game. If we're going to give a tip before we move on to our game, because the AFLW show starts in 7 minutes. So,
Collingwood. I love what JWS are doing. I don't know why. I just can't see a world. I said that last week. I didn't have that 10 out. Collingwood by 7.
Collingwood by 7. I think. I think Collingwood is going to be too strong. I really like the Giants. If you've watched the show throughout the year, you know how high I've been on the Giants. I just think they're going to be just a bit too strong. It's going to be one of those things. JWS rock up, give it a red hot crack, but just fall short. Collingwood by it'll be 2 kicks. Collingwood by 11 points. Collingwood by 11 points. Let's move on to Saturday afternoon. You're not travelling up. I am. I'm taking the risk of taking the absolute risk.
My bank account couldn't handle it, so I'm just...
Fair enough. I'm the idiot in this situation. I just want that to be clear. I am the idiot.
But maybe not. Look, in about 48 hours, you might not be. That's longer than that. But, you know what
72. 72.
Might be the idiot.
Nerves kicked in. We've only got 5 minutes to speak about this. So
nah.
Try
well, look, lucky we're on a Carlton channel, so the preview will be well and truly covered. But
yes,
no, I'm not nervous, and I feel like I will be when the game starts. I just think it's there's no expectation. I think, and like we discussed pre-show, we just wanted to have a crack. We don't want it to get belted, and we can probably live with whatever happens afterwards. Yep. I guess it would be a bit disappointing because you can never take these games for granted because you never know when you're going to get another opportunity. But you'd like to think with this group that it would come around again. You'd like to think. Never any guarantee. I think Brisbane will just... I think the break is such a difference. We were gassed last week. I don't even know how you back that up again. Over there, they're just... the talent is ridiculous, but I do think we match well. Especially in that midfield, I think we match them very well. It's stopping their out the back goals, which I hate. Like it, pet peeves in football, out the back goals. They love to do it. We can stop them, but I just don't know how long we can stop them for. We are going to hit a wall. It's when it happens. I don't know.
Yeah. Look, if we go up there and give it a fucking red hot crack, I said this in pre-show.
Yeah.
If we go up there and give it a red hot crack and put them under the pump and really give it to them, and they do still win, I think that says more about how mature the Lions have become, how good they have become, and I think you have to give credit to them. I don't think it's an indictment on us being bad. I think it will be an indictment on them being good. And in that situation, you just have to hold your hands up and say, it's footy, right?
Yep.
We, like the comments me saying, we do have momentum. We do have this uncanny belief within our team that we can do anything. At what point does belief not get you there? And at what point do you need actual like at what point does the body take over the mind and the body just can't do what the mind wants it to do? Martin and Harry will be big ins. Kerno can't play a third bad game in a row. Cripps is waiting to have a game where he just explodes. His first time at the Gabba since the incident last year. It's got the makings of something, but it's got the makings of something just magical. But in head speaking, I think the Lions should get it done by not by a lot. If I've got a gun to my head and I have to pick it, I'll go Lions by 15.
You know what? Why not? We might never get to tip Carlton again for the year. The Blues are going to do it.
Oh, sorry,
by 8
right.
points. They're going to do it by 8 points. Yeah. Look, I just hope they leave everything out there, and I hope you get your $2,300 values worth of however much it's cost you to get up there. So.
I think it's more than that, to be honest. Yeah.
I want to know.
Yeah. I'll be traveling up, so if anyone wants to come say hi, I'll be floating around pre-game around the ground, so just coming over. Say hello. Yeah, I don't know. I'm nervous, really nervous. Before I leave, Chillers ask any stats before we go. Not a current related stat, but last week, I think it was Chills asked, when was the last time two brothers won a flag in back-to-back years from separate clubs? It was 2006, 2007, Adam Selwood for West Coast and Joel Selwood for Geelong. There you go. There you go. That's what I'm here for. So yes, thank you all very much for watching. Go, everyone, stick around for the BAW show. Shannon, Kira, and Terry, I think. I don't know. They do lovely stuff. And the girls won on the weekend very convincingly, which is fantastic to see. Hopefully we can take that form on to Saturday afternoon. But Nathan, thank you very much for joining me once again. Thank you everyone for watching. Make sure you subscribe, stick around, like the video, all that good stuff. See you guys next week, where hopefully we're previewing Carlton in a grand final, which is just fucked. I can't believe that. But yes, we're either going to be very depressed or very happy. See you guys next week. Goodbye.